Welcome to this week. My name is Gloria and I am today's host. It is so great to be with you, and we are happy that you chose to spend this time with us live or after the fact. This week is a bi weekly show that takes place every Saturday at 2 p.m. UTC, 3 p.m. in the West, 4 p.m. in Central Africa, and 5 p.m. in East Africa. We chat about current affairs from across the continent, touching on politics, pop culture, and more. And we welcome you to engage with us here in the comment sections or at our website at leadersofafrica.org/live. We also invite you to join our Discord community, which is a platform where we connect and chat about various topics that could be of interest to you as well. And we also invite you to subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Hit that red button at the bottom of your screen, yes, and so that way you will not miss any of our future events. Karibu and welcome. Hello in here. How are you doing, Violet?
I'm alive and very excited for this.
Glad to hear that. I have a question to ask you though. Last week, you told us that you were the only person in this group. 2 weeks ago, in our previous show, you mentioned that you were the only person in this group who was not vaccinated. And you promised to give us an update when we come back. So here we are. What's new?
So I did go for my appointment, but I didn't get my vaccine of choice. So I turned around and made another appointment. So during the next show, I will be vaccinated.
All right. Okay. We look forward to that. Well, I would like to believe that everyone here today is doing well. So why don't we get straight into our discussions today? And I will start with you, Ghana. But first, a quiz. And I also would like to invite those who are watching to play along with us. You can leave your answer to any of our quiz questions here in the comment section below, and we'll be very happy to hear from you. So, Ghana, this is for you. A woman gave birth to a record number of babies. How many babies are we talking about? And where did this take place?
When I heard the news, and I was reading the news, I put a call to friends in Mali because I've always been a very good friend of folks from Mali. So the lady is from Mali, and she gave birth to 9 children. But I was so happy the way the husband went about the news. He said that is a glorious gift from God, and that God is going to take care of the kids. So he didn't run away from his responsibility, because in Nigeria, we have had similar cases where, people give birth to 4 children, 5 children. And what happened was that the father ran away from the family, that this was too big a responsibility. But in the case of the man in Mali, he took it very philosophically. And I said, he knows that wherever God provides, he definitely will take care of it. And I offered my prayers to him. And I'm very sure we are the leaders of Africa. We also offer our prayers to the family. And hopefully, maybe some colleagues will start a GoFundMe to support the family. And because we need to care for them.
Oh, absolutely. Life is a gift, and we all as a society need to support this new family. Just a bit of background of that story. The mother, Halima Sise, she's 25 years old, and so she gave birth to 9 babies at 30 weeks of pregnancy. 10 doctors and 25 paramedics assisted at the delivery. And so the babies will have to spend 2 to 3 months in incubators. So that's our quiz for today. And so, Ghana, what did you find interesting in the news this week, besides, of course, the story that we just talked about?
When I was reading about that story, one of the things that came to mind, is a professor, the vice chancellor of one of the leading universities in Africa. And this professor is from South Africa. Is the vice chancellor of Fitz University. He has this big idea of turning the university into MIT-style university in South Africa and in Africa as a whole. He's one of those vice chancellors that comes with very big vision. Ironically, when this professor, the vice chancellor, was to be installed at the FESI of Faith University in South Africa, there was a protest that broke out that even affected its installation as the Vice Chancellor of the university. And it was just recently, on the 29th of April, that he was installed as the Vice Chancellor. And this national protest led to the death of one of the students in Faith University. And one of the things I like about the Vice Chancellor is that he took responsibility, for what went wrong and what led to the deaths of the students. It didn't push. He said that there are things we should have done differently. Of course, it wasn't the university authority that killed the student. It was the police that killed the student. And, as a student leader, I felt bad about that because in those days, one of those things that actually triggered our annoyance was the death of our student on protest ground. Before I became a very feasible national student leader in Nigeria, there were occasions that we went on student demonstration that students were killed right before me. I've been on protests that people were killed right before me by the police, so I've experienced it. I know what it means psychologically to student leaders experiencing that, to protesting students experiencing that. And that escalated the crisis in South Africa, very similar to what happened in 2015/2017, when there was a protest on Fee Must Fall in South Africa. And, the underpinning basis for this same protest and the same protest that happened in 2015 is very similar. It's still related to the issue of student debt and student fee, because historically, student fee, student debt in South Africa, particularly for those they call the missing middle, it's been so high and it's been affecting their performance. It's been affecting their continued participation in higher education spaces in South Africa. So, students went to protest because of this. And we had very similar experience in Nigeria, that we have always been, afraid that it's many factors contributing to student inability to access university education as a result of increasing fee, etc., etc. So we have related experience in Nigeria, and we have always demonstrated because of that. One thing that is always painful to me is this. When students go on protest, it affects the capability of university to successfully conduct their businesses. And for somebody who came in to the university with a big vision of transforming the university into MIC-style campus university in South Africa and in Africa as a whole, the student protest, if it continues over the year, may derate the realization of this very lofty vision of the Vice Chancellor. So this is one of the things that is actually concerning to me. And of course, I'm also much more concerned about the issue of student protests related to student debt and the fee that students have to pay to access education in African universities.
Yeah, Ghana, great assessment of the situation there in South Africa. I read the story, and Professor Vilakazi mentioned that protests are just one of the many ways to get your concerns heard. And for a lot of students who've been going through a really difficult time, especially following the pandemic and all the economic difficulties that this pandemic brought, what are the other ways that what are the other avenues that students can use to get their concerns heard? I'm pretty sure a lot of students will want to know this.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Gloria, for that very intelligent question. For somebody like me who have been on the sides of both tables, when I was a student leader, I was representing students in Senate level meetings, and I know how Vice Chancellor talk. Vice Chancellors, they will always tell their side of the story. And for the most part, they will always tell students. And when they tell their story, and this is one thing very unique among Vice Chancellors that I've operated with or listened to outside of Nigeria, they will always try to blame students for taking to the route of protest. They barely tell the story of the conversations that students have had either at the national level, at the state level, or at the university level on burning issues. I'm sure the students did not just start with protest. They've been on this for some time because it's a national crisis. And they've been on this for some time. And as students, it appears to me that they've not been getting the desired result. So to me, I won't say it's all about student protest. I think it's all about creating an enabling environment that is characterized by trust, because students, they always want to see that they have a conversation that is defined by trust. If they have this skepticism that the authority are just playing around with words, they are never going to stay, they are never going to address the root of the crisis that they are calling attention of the folks in authority to. I tell you, students will go on protest because the protest is the last resort. That is the power of any movement. And in South Africa, historically, it's been like this. They've seen what protests have accorded them in the past. They've seen what protests have done for them during the fight against apartheid. So they know the full power of protest in South Africa. And it's so difficult for us to get that out of the instrument that they use to press home their demands against any authority. So one of the things I want to say is that the university and those in authority generally, they should learn to hold very trustworthy conversation with students in spaces that students will find very safe and comfortable. Because if students are not, getting the right body language from those in authority, they will always go back to protest. And this is one thing. And again,
I want to jump in there. One of the things that you mentioned there, Ghana, is the ability for students to organize through some of these consultative bodies that are there, right? And many universities have these student representative councils or SRCs, or there are a lot of different names for them, but they're an opportunity for students to, hold regular elections or some sort of process of selection and then be represented in certain forums. And I think these types of bodies, or SRC type bodies, have different levels of effectiveness. Oftentimes they can be used just simply to kind of give an opportunity for students to, share their thoughts, but there's no formal obligation of addressing anything that is mentioned in these consultative forums, even though some of them can be quite powerful amongst the students, right? They could be seen as quite powerful modes of mobilization. From the faculty perspective, from the administration perspective, they may not be a body that they accord much voice in actual policy making. So I think there's a bit of a disconnect there. But I think, so that's one avenue one could use. Another avenue I think perhaps is better is to be a little bit more proactive and a little bit more broad-based in terms of consultation. I think universities have to think about the way in which they survey their students, right? We are all researchers, as faculty members, and we can use that opportunity as being researchers to really understand what the student experience is like, not just from the perspective of quote unquote student leaders, but the broad-based number of students on issues of debt and alike, right? So one of the things that I guess I would suggest having a conversation a bit more about is, what is the broad-based student body saying, and then make that as a point of reference for activities and conversation and discussion. But of course, as you mentioned, Ghana, a lot of times, even if these things are happening, either SRC is advocating, or at the other hand, you have some sort of survey instrument or something like that, the administration still will not listen because they have their own priorities. In that case, as you've alluded to, I think protest is a legitimate way of pushing forwards those student interests, because on some campuses, the life of the student, the experience of the student, particularly in this more neoliberal age that we're living in, is very hard. And I think in South Africa, you see that take place, and there is some good reason behind that.
Yeah. So, briefly on the issue of, go ahead, Violet.
Go ahead,
I'll come back
Violet.
to the SRC.
Thank you. So I'm Ghana and listening to Peter, and then thinking, okay, but regardless of used to put their grievances out there, is the university still going to fold and listen? Because I did read the article, and according to the article, some of the SRC council members are saying that the university needs to scrap historical debt, and the university is saying that this does not make financial sense. So it makes me wonder if assuming they had all these talks with the university before they held these protests, and then maybe it didn't work, and now they're holding protests because it didn't work. If the university didn't fall the first time because it didn't make financial sense, will the university fall now because its stand is still the same? And I can understand where the university is coming from, because again, it's hard to build an MIT style university without the funding. But at the same time, we also need to see that the students are struggling with financial problems, especially in light of the pandemic. So the thing is, where is the middle ground? Because I can see the plight of the students, but I can also see the stand that the university is taking and why it is taking that stand. So the question is between efficiency and equity. So what do you choose, or where do you strike the balance?
Well, I think from the perspective of students in South Africa is there's a lot of wealth in South Africa, right? And this is not just about sort of higher education and student debt per se, but the interest of larger redistribution, right? The fact that there is so much wealth on the sidelines, and they're saying to themselves, why isn't that wealth funding our universities to make them more of a place of equity? Particularly when we look back at the fact that it's been some 25 years, after the end of apartheid, right? So this is the setting for these protests, which is perhaps a very different setting in other country contexts. We have to acknowledge that fact that there are different dimensions here, but that is the big concern. Right. It's more about the redistribution and having educational institutions being a place of promoting that equity in broader society. And I think that's part of the main issue of conversation here.
So in addition to that, Pierre, another context to this is that, and which is very similar in different African universities, vice chancellors, they believe that students are paying virtually nothing to get educated in higher ed in Africa. And when they speak to this, what they have in mind is a comparison of the amount of money that students pay in African universities compared to what students pay in foreign universities, in places like Australia, in places like European universities, and in universities in the United States. And when you look at the amount of money that students pay in those places, it's compared to what students pay in Africa, it is always peanut. So vice chancellors of universities in Africa, they generally tend to view students' reactions to the amount of money that they need to pay to get educated as Africa as misplaced. So I can see this work playing out in South African context, that we want to make this university, and it's not just a thing that is, limited to Fit University. It's cut across in South Africa, because students are complaining. It's a national crisis. And the reason why this is a national crisis deserves a lot of attention. And if you bring more money to fund the university, and part of that is that universities are talking about autonomy. They want to be, charging fee and pricing university education at the right price so that they can address a lot of issues. Because that is not just the only issue the university is facing. The university is also struggling with its own funding. The university is not able to fund itself as it ought to be. So the university too is having internal funding crisis. And one of the ways we want to generate funding is to continue to increase fees. When fees are increased, Peter, and we have this expectation that students need to pay for their own education, which is actually playing out in South Africa, just like in every other places too, including in Nigeria, then it becomes so difficult for us to say that students won't go into protest, especially where students have limited opportunities to generate income to fund their education. And when you look at the majority of the students in educational spaces in Africa, they are from poor families. And because majority of those that are affected in South Africa, they belong to what they call the missing middle. That means that historically, the parents of the student, they are struggling with the problem of poverty. So these are students from families that have issues of intergenerational poverty. So they are dealing with broad systemic crises that, if not considered by university vice chancellors, it will affect their ability to increase fee to fund education in Africa in order for them to make our university better funded and better positioned. So one thing I would say is this,
and I think that's why you see the challenge to this sort of more neoliberal approach to education here, right? The state has to and redistribution has to play a role, right? It cannot just fall on the individuals. Yes, individuals should contribute some amount, right? But you have to make sure that those educational institutions are such that they promote that equity. And again, we've kind of accepted, and I'd say not myself perhaps personally, but we in sort of the educational express, not just in South Africa, but the world over, have embraced to some extent this neoliberal approach of educational funding. And it hasn't always been that way in some country contexts as well. The government has played a larger role in supporting education in some additional eras. So, I think that's what's at stake here to some degree. I saw Eva wanted to jump in. Do you want to jump in, Eva?
Yeah. I was just going to add to what you were just saying. I was just going to say that the university has to start to reflect on their sources of funding. If your sources of funding is increasing school fees, then you are putting too much burden on the student. And also thinking about it, in most of our countries, students do not have the luxury of finding jobs and also going to school at the same time that takes place in some of the Western countries. So at the end of the day, it's a student that have to think about paying the fees, trying to survive on campus, and also take care of their basic needs and things like that. So we have to really reflect on our sources of funding. And one of the ways that I'm thinking that universities in most of our countries are not capitalizing on is the fact that they are not really involving alumni to invest, because I remember when I completed university in the US, I started getting a lot of phone calls. I started getting a lot of emails to donate. Do you get it? But when I finished University of Ghana, I've not gotten anything like that. Nobody has reached out to me to donate. It's just recently that I've been thinking about how can I also help. So I think universities also have to start to capitalize on some of this alumni engagement and try to participate in those like the Giving Tuesdays, where companies or educational institution create some kind of a website to say, hey, let's raise this amount of money to support scholarship for this amount of students. I think we need to start to capitalize on that so that at the end of the day, when we have to fund some project in our university, we don't put the burden on our students. And also,
I totally agree.
How much more also is the government putting in our education on the continent? It's something that we also have to start to reflect on in terms of the funding that is also coming from our governments.
I agree with that. And we have to move on. Gonna give you 1 minute to go.
Thank you so much. So I had a very interesting conversation with a professor that supervised my doctoral education. And, she was on a committee in the US that revised government support of public education, particularly higher education. And when she came back to me, she said, Ghana, governments in Africa, they seems to be stupid. He said, the huge amount of money that the US government put in supporting public higher education, that African governments are doing virtually nothing to support
still not enough.
Higher public education, not enough. So part of the conversation that the Vice Chancellor, I agree, Peter. Yeah, but part of the conversation that Vice Chancellors need to do is to tell government that they have to put more money to support education, because the money invested to support public higher education in Africa is money used to fund development on the continent. So they haven't seen the funding of public higher education in Africa as one of the ways to address the development challenges affecting the continent. And that is one big area they have to address. And lastly, it's about the issue of management of the little financial resources that universities.
Thank you for saying that.
Look at Nigeria now. Almost major universities, Vice Chancellor, are having issues on mismanagement of university funds. In my university, at the University of Lagos, the Vice Chancellor is being in the news for mismanagement of university funds, running into billions, and there was a panel that was set up. The panel, the Vice Chancellor said that he was involved in mismanaging the university fund. A facilitation panel was set up. The same facilitation panel came up with the same conclusion. But this guy was reinstated back into the university. And it's just one example among many vice chancellors, among many heads of university institutions that are mismanaging what they call the mega resources that university is receiving to run their own affairs. So this is very important. As we focus on students, we need to focus on the government, and we need to focus on the effective management of the little resources that universities are getting to fund education. If they do well with it, this may be one of the ways that we can actually create a trustworthy environment where universities authority and students can have a very conducive, conversation that will de-escalate and, deregularize the frequency of student protests, having been the thing that we deal with in African university. Well, we lost a lot of time to all these protests.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ghana, for sharing that. It's clear based on this discussion we just had that there is no one-size-fits-all solution to this issue of education. And I like the fact that Professor Valakazi actually said it's not even just about a higher institution, it's about improving all forms of post-school education, including vocational training, and our government needs to play a bigger role in improving education access for all peoples. Great conversation. We have another quiz, and this quiz now it's for you, Eva. Which country rescinded a recently imposed ban on the sale of donkey meat?
Oh, that is Kenya.
That's
That is
correct.
Kenya. Actually, donkey meat has become an issue because I have a friend that is actually working in this space, kind of an animal advocate for donkeys, because there's an issue of donkeys being killed a lot and their skins are being, I think, exported to China. So he was actually telling me there is actually shortages of donkeys. That is why even the Kenyan government put a ban on it in the first place. And right now they are lifting the ban so that donkey meat can be eaten once again. But it's been the crisis. There've been crisis even in the donkey
has anyone of us eaten donkey meat?
Animal kingdom, because they are depleting. Their population is going down, so it's something that we have to think about. I don't know if you guys have read a lot. There have been a lot of articles about the fact that a lot of donkeys have been killed and their skins have been used for other stuff.
Wow, Gloria, you asked a donkey expert the donkey quiz question. Is that fair? Do we all get to ask us questions about our expertise?
Idea. But Eva's been studying the history of donkey meat and what's going on in that sector. So I'm just glad this question went to the right person and I did not even know it. All right, just to touch a bit on the story. It's an interesting perspective, Eva, that you mentioned about exporting donkey skin. I didn't know anything about that. In the case of Kenya, though, the High Court in Kenya, they decided to rescind this ban because there was a slaughterhouse and a group of herdsmen who challenged that ban and said they were losing revenue. And so the High Court decided that the government did not do enough to defend its case. So they decided to remove that ban. But it's clear, based on what Eva just shared, now that there's more to the story.
Yeah.
Oh, well, so Eva, of course, besides the donkey meat, which news story caught your attention this week?
Yeah, I think I will try a donkey meat when I go to Kenya, so that would be fun.
Oh,
okay. So in the news, I don't know if any of you have read this, but I'm sure you have heard about it, about the fact that Twitter want to establish a base on the continent of Africa, and they've chosen Ghana to be the place that they want to start from. And this is a good initiative, which the Ghana government has been so happy about. And the reason why Twitter decided to go to Ghana, they outlined a number of issues, which is they said that Ghana is a champion for democracy. Ghana supports free speech, and also there is online freedom and open internet access. So that was really interesting to hear that these are some of the reasons, which is basically true. I'm from Ghana, I'm Ghanaian, and these are all true. We are the champions for democracy. And also he made the fact that also Ghana is also housing the African Continental Free Trade headquarters. which also plays an important role for the development of the continent. So this is all come together to place Ghana at the center of attraction for foreign direct investment. However, the fact that Twitter is going to Accra has also raised a lot of concerns among some tech people, though most of them sees this initiative to be good and also is a win for the African continent. But people were contemplating, why didn't Twitter go to places like Nigeria, Egypt, South Africa? Because these are like the tech hubs, like these are the places where entrepreneurship, a lot of fintechs and a lot of tech initiatives are taking place. But Twitter has its reasons for going there. The fact that Twitter is going to Ghana is also a good thing for the continent. But our neighbors, Nigerians, started talking about why Twitter went to Ghana, and they were also reflecting on the conditions that businesses face in their countries and the fact that they have to pay attention to some of the issues that businesses face. And one of the guys who is a tech pioneer in Nigeria was talking about the fact that he's called Femi Long, was talking about the fact that Nigeria is a big market, but however, it's a harsh place to do business. The conditions for doing business in Nigeria is really harsh. And he was talking about the fact that in recent years, Ghana has invested a lot in creating an enabling environment for business to grow. So this was really a good thing to hear. And the other thing is that the interesting story is that the Nigerian Minister for Information, who is called Lai Mohammed, was also blaming the media. Actually, there was a clip on that, was blaming the media for the fact that Twitter chose Ghana because of the bad press the media has been given to.
I think we have that clip.
Wow.
Let's see if we have that clip.
People feel that it's a slight on Nigeria, considering the volume of business they do in Nigeria. So, what is your take on this? What's going to be the implication on the Nigerian economy, sir?
Well, I think the natural expectation would have been for Nigeria to be the hub for Twitter, especially in this part of Africa. Even the fact that we have about 25 or so million Twitter users in Nigeria against 8 million Twitter users in Accra. So clearly the decision was not a commercial one, a business one. But I think Twitter has the prerogative and the exclusive rights as to where to site its headquarters. But I hope that this will serve as a lesson to Nigerians for not citing its headquarters, or rather, for citing its headquarters in Accra, Ghana. Is that Accra, Ghana is a champion of democracy, it's rule of law in Accra, among other reasons. This is what you get when you demarket your own country. The past time of most Nigerians, especially the media, is to find fault with their own country. Most times exaggerate the challenge.
Eva, I know you have a lot of other points based on this story, but let me quickly bring Ghana into this discussion. I am curious about the perspective of blaming the media. What's your take on this?
I mean, there's a context to that. And one way to understand the response of Lai to this, Minister Lai Mohammed, to this issue is that the government has been having some issues with the media, particularly their reporting of issue of insecurity in the country. So I think he was using that as an avenue to get at them. But to me, I'm not actually perturbed by the location of the headquarters of Twitter in Ghana, because we have several others in Nigeria. We have Facebook, we have Google, just name it. We have many others in Nigeria. So we can't have everything in Nigeria. And this is something that Nigerians need to learn to accept. Because if everything is located in Nigeria, I mean, it's not going to be fair to other African countries. The fact that we have the population, we have everything, we have this, and we have all of this working out for us in Nigeria, doesn't mean that we should have everything. So to me, I think it's a good decision that this is located in Ghana. Because if everything is concentrated in Nigeria, it's going to affect the opportunity that other African countries can have by having such a important headquarter domiciled in their various places. And the other thing to me is this, in fairness to the government, I've been a very strong critic of the Nigerian government, particularly the president that I work for to install in the country. However, when it comes to the aspect of business, I can tell you that Nigeria has made tremendous improvement in terms of business environment compared to what we used to have in the past. And everybody is saying this. Everybody is saying this, that ease of doing business has improved. However, there are many opportunities to make it better in the country. So that is happening. And however, recently, Nigerian government has been taking some actions that some people are not happy with because of the insecurity situation in the country, trying to clamp down this, trying to clamp down that. And I can see Twitter playing into that, saying that this is one of the reasons why we made this decision. And it's very understandable, it's very, very understandable from the perspective of Twitter. But I want to say congratulations to our good people in Ghana, and that is also good for Ghana. And, the thing about all of these things is that I see Africa as one integrated whole. I don't look at Africa from this perspective. And this is what we are talking about in our integration series. The integration series that has been going on by the leaders of Africa, that has been organized by the leaders of Africa. We are trying to promote the perception of looking at whatever is happening that is good in one African country is good for other African country. And that people across the different African countries, they should learn to work together to make things work to their entire benefit. So having Twitter located in Ghana is a positive one. People should see it as part of the greater African integration emerging trend. Nigeria should plug into how they can benefit from the location of headquarters of Twitter in Ghana, just like every other African country. So in that way, we support Ghana to be successful with Twitter locating their headquarters.
On a lighter note.
Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly.
On a lighter note, when Ghana mentioned that Nigeria should find ways of plugging into how they can benefit from Twitter's positioning in Ghana, it reminded me of that mini Twitter war that was going on with Nigerians being salty over, Twitter going into Ghana. And I did see one tweet where the Nigerians were having a conversation and they're like, oh, this is outrageous and blah. And then another Nigerian just responded and said, oh, we'll lose this war because the Ghanaians will just switch Twitter off from their side and that will be it. So yeah.
So I'm just wondering about these investments, what it actually means, right? So on the face of it, and we showed you on the screen the tweet from the president of Ghana saying, I'm really happy that Jack is here in Ghana. But what does that actually mean, right? There's always this sort of promise of opportunities, jobs, of sort of greater tech capacity. But we don't necessarily know what that footprint's going to look like. And also, there are a lot of questions about what is Twitter's approach, right? What is their technological approach? What are they sort of bringing to bear? Now, obviously, Twitter is involved in sort of the social media space, but they are also involved in the more of the data space as well, sort of understanding populations, because there's a lot of data. We do use Twitter data when it comes to academic research as well, right? That has become quite popular in recent years. So my question perhaps for you, Eva, since you are following the story is, what are they promising? What are they suggesting this is going to be? Or is it really unclear as to what that footprint is actually going to be?
This is just the beginning. So we have to wait to see some of the things or some of the initiative they really want to take. But the ultimate goal is that they are interested in helping develop the African continent. So also that is also one reason. And also Twitter has a lot of Africans using Twitter. So it will be good for Africa to have a base or head office that is also managing the affairs that is taking place on the continent. And this is also putting Africa and Ghana in the position of attracting multinational companies and others to come and invest on the continent, and investment coming into our African countries is good for job creation. It's also good to help build a strong economy, because the thing is, we can't do it alone. We need partners. We need partners that can also come in and invest. And also, we also have to capitalize on some of this investment to help develop our own people. The other thing Twitter was also talking about is the fact that they are also interested in like developing or investing in communities on the continent. So it's not just going to be Twitter having a headquarters and having African employees, but also they're also going to invest in the tech space, and we need that. We need that. We need investment in the internet access on the whole continent. We need investment in some of the things, AI.
Yeah.
So I believe that this is a good initiative. But thinking about this too, my other question is like, how are we as African also supporting our own tech companies? Are we also creating the environment for them to grow? Are we also creating the environment for them to be competitive? These are some of the things that we have to reflect on. Twitter coming is good, but we also have to think about how about our local tech companies too.
Yeah, and you also raised the issue there of Twitter playing a role in building communities and what this technological advance will be. So one of the questions that I would have is, I'm curious whether this brings Twitter more proximate to conversations that are going on in countries for how tech is being used in some cases for the good and some cases for the not so good, right? The spread of misinformation, which has been a topic of conversation in Ghana, neighboring Nigeria, as well as elsewhere and globally too, right? So I wonder if this brings those conversations closer to where they're taking place as well, and creating a fertile tech ground that promotes tech, that promotes sort of good outcomes, community development, those things that you mentioned, Eva, while confronting some of the concerns that are there. So I'm glad you raised some of those points.
Yeah, I like
So
what
in
you brought
addition,
that up for me. Ghana, just 1 second, following up on what Twitter said about misinformation. Of course, this is the beginning. There is a lot of questions that we have, and we will not have all the answers right away. But for me, one of the areas of interest to me is misinformation. And Twitter, Eva mentioned it, Twitter has a lot of users on the African continent. And up until this point, there were no resources based on the continent to really crack down on issues of misinformation and following up the use of this platform to promote things such as gender-based violence, misinformation, and a lot of things related to the COVID pandemic and the vaccine. So from that perspective, this is a very, very important move in order to make sure that there are resources that are specifically dedicated to the African continent to improve that platform, hopefully, for the African people. The one area I'm curious about is languages. We know Ghana is just one country and Africa is diverse, rich in languages. I'm curious to see what Twitter is going to do in the area of investing in different communities and languages in order to indeed improve this platform for all people.
And both you, Gloria, and Eva brought up the issue of numbers of users. In the clip that you just watched before, they were arguing about why Twitter should go to certain countries. They were saying, well, there are more Twitter users and followers in Nigeria than Ghana. So therefore, why are they considering Ghana as a place? So they were having the war over followers on Twitter as part of this conversation that the minister was reflecting on there in the clip.
That's
well, you know what, Peter?
Actually, the Nigerian users are even more than the entire population of Ghana. Nigeria has about 39 million people who have Twitter accounts. And this is even more than like the 32 million living in Ghana alone. So that is, it's something also we have to think about. But actually, Twitter made their reason why they chose Ghana. So I think we just...
Well, you know one thing? The deliberation actually shows one of the concerning issues that we need to pay attention to in Africa: the quality of conversations and the ability of youth to interrogate issues intelligently and see through how opportunities like these need to be better repositioned to serve their needs. None of them is talking about some of the issues we are raising. issues about what does this actually mean for the issue, for the capability of indigenous companies to put Twitters on their toes. They are not looking at how Twitter might affect negatively the ability of indigenous companies who have similar ideas to thrive in these spaces. None of them is raising conversation about what were the kinds of agreements that went between Twitter and the government in terms of, what is Twitter going to be doing for the university? What is Twitter going to be doing for local communities? Because when Twitter say we are going to do this for local communities, are local communities involved in this conversation? Who determines what goes to the local community? And these are very deep conversations that needs to take place. Because when they say, we help them to do this, it's coming back to this new colonial mentality that we know what is better for them and we are in a better position to assist them. This has not supported the development of Africa positively. For the most part, what we've been getting out of this is that we support some of these foreign organizations to do better. I'm not against foreign entities doing better in Africa. I'm not against it. But the thing is that what are African countries, communities, universities, what are we getting from this? These are very important conversations that one would have expected that the Twitter community should be having. But it appears this is not the case. And that is concerning to me about the quality of the minds that we have in the qualities of the mind in many of these young guys
I
that
think,
are very fine.
I think that's an important I think that's an important conversation to have. I think we've all sort of raised that question. What does this actually mean, right? We want to know more, and we'll obviously learn more. But we're urging that conversation for what it's going to bring in a broader-based development sense. But from the perspective of a company, right? That concern is there. It's always there, but it's probably not at the forefront of one's mind, right? And I think that goes for both domestic companies, I should say, in say Nigeria or Ghana, that they're thinking about, how do I maximize my profit? How do I maximize my reach? How do I market, right? How do I do these things? That's what's going through their minds. And obviously we're pushing the issue of sort of the broader base effects, which I think is good, but we also have to acknowledge the fact that, perhaps we have to acknowledge the fact that they are still a company and they are going to behave as oftentimes companies do. But obviously we urge them to think about these larger issues or concerns or contribute to this national conversation.
I
Absolutely. I just want to close with this debate. Okay, Eva, I'll give you a minute.
Yeah, so
everyone gets 1 minute at the end.
Okay. Yeah, we all have questions that need to be answered. And for me, like as I said, what is in for our local tech companies too? We also have to think about them, because they're also in the same space. There's going to be competition. How does our local tech companies compete? Is there resources for them going forward? That is something that we have to think about.
Absolutely. There are a lot of aspects of this that we need to think about and talk, but at the moment, there's very little that we know about Twitter and the extent to which it's going to support local communities. We just need to keep our eyes open and see how this is going to play out in the next few months. Time for another quiz. This one is Violet.
Slay me.
I always make sure to put the most difficult quiz for you, Violet, and I know that you'll get it. So there's a succession battle going on in a particular country in Africa right now after the death of a traditional ruler. What country is it? And who is the traditional ruler that we're talking about?
The country is South Africa. The traditional establishment is the Zulu Kingdom. I cannot pronounce their names. But I do know that the king died, and then now the queen has also died shortly after the king's death, and now there's a succession battle going on. I just, for the life of me, can't pronounce their names.
It's okay. I will help you. So the queen who has died, her name is Queen Chiyiwe Matfombi Dlamini Zulu. She died at the age of 65 last week, only a month, as Violet pointed out, after ascending to the throne following the death of her husband, who was King Goodwill Zwelithini. So, as the leader of the South Africa Zulu nation, the Zulu nation, which is comprised, of course, of people of the Zulu ethnicity, it's the largest ethnic group in South Africa. And since the death of the queen, now last week, different groups within the royal family have sought to challenge the throne. So right now, there is no king, there is no queen, and it remains to be seen how this succession battle is going to unfold.
And if I can recall, I think Violet had this question before, right? Because we covered this as one of our quiz questions about the death of Goodwill, the former king, some weeks ago, right? So quick succession. And Violet got it right again.
Wow, I didn't even think of all of these.
Yeah, the quiz questions are very appropriate today, Gloria.
How to keep this trend going forward. So, Violet, any story on your mind this week?
Yeah, well, this one is a sad story, but well, I have a more maybe inspirational story compared to this one. So there's this gentleman on the African continent. He's Kenyan. His name is Julius Mburu. He lost his sight at the age of 10 through an inherited and irreversible condition known as maculopathy. It's a degenerative condition that affects the photoreceptors of the eyes, or the macula, which is that part of the eye at the back of the retina, which controls the ability to read, see, find objects in detail, recognize faces, colors, and focus center vision. However, this gentleman has grown up to become a lawyer. He's a skater. He's a dancer. He's a car enthusiast. He's a motivational speaker. He's a mentor, a poet, spoken word artist. I mean, all of these things. And when I saw his story, I was so inspired and I had so much respect for him. So he describes being battling depression and, being overcome by a feeling of helplessness when he lost his sight at 10 years of age, and having been able to see for 10 years, and then all of a sudden finding himself in total darkness, as he describes it. But then being able to climb out from that and becoming the person that he is now, I mean, I was really, really overcome with a lot of respect. And above all, he didn't lose his passion for cars, and he reviews cars via touch. So basically, he touches the cars and uses the hard lines on the bodies of the cars to, feel them and give reviews. And I mean, I find that quite inspiring. I did listen to a TED Talk at some point, and the gentleman speaking was also blind, and he did say that sometimes sight can be a distraction, but there's something about blindness that gives you, this laser focus. And so when I was reading this story, it reminded me of that. But something that did strike me was when he said that in a world that tries to dispossess people of self, he goes the opposite way, and he describes himself as a lover of life and one who strives to live a heart-centered life. And so I just thought I would share that story because, I mean, it's very, very uplifting, especially for a person who's on the African continent, because it did make me think about accessibility issues on the continent. I mean, I know we are still lagging very much behind our Western counterparts when it comes to accessibility issues. And as much as he has thrived, I'm thinking about many of them haven't been that successful because of accessibility and accessibility issues. And so I'm just thinking about how also governments can begin to have building more intentional ICT capabilities to make sure that people with disability have access to, much more than they can have at the moment. Yeah. And so that's the story.
Yeah. This is definitely a beautiful story. I did some digging into his story, and it's just fascinating the resilience of Julius, his spirit is he's on another level. I mean, it's very
He's
inspiring, very uplifting. And I read that he actually, at some point, he was in high school and he recovered his sight. Briefly recovered his sight in high school. After high school, he went into law school. At that point that he again lost his sight, but that didn't even stop him from completing his law degree. He kept on studying. He completed his degree, and that brings the discussion to the issue of accessibility. The Violet, you pointed out that if it wasn't for accessibility for people who are blind or have any other form of disability, so many people get discouraged in terms of pursuing education because not all university can accommodate somebody like Julius. And so this is both inspiring, uplifting, and again brings to the forefront the discussion of how much are we investing in making sure that Julius and people like him can still live a full life even with a disability.
Yeah, I mean, I find this story very interesting for many reasons, and I will just speak to two. When I was at the University of Lagos on my undergraduate degree, a good number of folks that surrounded me were physically challenged. And in fact, one of my roommates, I pray that God continue to bless him in his grave, named Ibrahim, was also, we were living in the same room and are willing to his class. We take turns to wheel him to class because he was literally on wheelchair. And, one of the things that he spoke about extensively, and which in a way the university eventually attended to, was the fact for the university to create a disability enabling environment because they have a lot of challenges going to classes. So we literally need to carry him up the staircases. So we need two people to assist us to carry him up the staircases because his classes were like in the second floor for the most part. So it was a big struggle for us trying to get him to his classes. And if we are not available, because we also have our own classes too, that he needs to look for people around to assist him with the process. Well, interestingly, the University of Lagos Authority responded to that need. And I was really surprised, because he actually brought me closer to many disabled students in the university. I was really surprised that a good number of them studied law. A good number of blind students, when I was a student at the University of Lagos, they studied law. And I would go to their areas, play with them because I was very, very close to them. In fact, when I was contesting for the student union president at the University of Lagos, they constituted a big part of my campaign team. Because of the friendship and trust that we've built over the years, I will always go to them, talk to them. We exchange a lot of views. They have this very strong inner motivation to get things done. But that's it. The other one, which is what I'm dealing with now, has to do with issues of students that have all sorts of disability, cerebral palsy, which is very difficult to manage in African countries, and sickle cell. Sickle cell is a major one, because students that have sickle cell, they struggle a lot. In educational spaces, there's not enough to support them. And this is concerning to me, because one thing is to have the strong will and to have the parent that have the financial capability to push you through the process.
Yes.
If you don't have the parents that have that financial capability, even when you have the strong will, and it becomes so difficult for them to live to achieve their dreams. And this is where the government need to make this an important priority issue that needs to receive a lot of attention. How are we planning to make life better for people with all forms of disability on the continent? It's very, very important. When we have this conversation about development, this is one of the missing middle. This is one of the missing issues that we need to situate in our conversation on development in Africa, because they can contribute massively to driving the development of Africa if they are given a lot of attention. Look at this young man who studied law. Disability doesn't mean that somebody cannot become an engineer. Disability doesn't mean that somebody cannot become a tech guru. But for that to happen, we need to create an enabling environment for them. And I tell you, those folks whose children are going to cerebral palsy, a lot of them now, the ladies have been disrespected by their husband. I'm in the middle of these issues. And I'm worried what this means. And I'm really worried about this, that the African government is not doing enough to support parents that are facing all forms of disability issues, which is rising on the continent, not just in Nigeria. So it's one issue that the government in Africa need to start paying a lot of attention to. And they have to be seen doing something meaningful, not something politically correct. We want something meaningful being done to support parents with kids with disability.
Yeah, I'd like to think about them as differently abled. When you were talking about your colleague in the university, did remind me of another colleague of mine while I was in college, and we used to have problems with power outages, and sometimes we'd be studying in the night and power would go off, and he would continue reading. And he told us it was because he never noticed when power went out, so it never affected his work. And he could always leave his hall of residence and walk to class, and his class was about half a kilometer away. And I remember asking him, how are you able to get to class? And he says, I know exactly the number of steps I have to take, so I count them, and I know exactly where I'm supposed to make turns, and I know where I have to climb upstairs. And I always found that very fascinating. And if he met you once, all he had to do was greet you, and he would remember you, even just by touching your hand. He would say, oh, this is valid. So I like to think about those folks as differently abled. And I do think that Ghana, as you've stressed, if our governments invested a lot more in making accessibility easier for them, there's so much that they have to keep.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ghana, Violet, and everybody for your amazing perspective on the story of Julius. And Twitter, now I have Twitter stuck in my head. I actually meant to say, Peter, don't think that you can escape this week's quiz. I have a quiz question for you too, so here it goes. Which country seeks to bring the first messenger RNA vaccine plant to Africa?
That would be Rwanda.
Yes, you are absolutely right. So, Rwandan President Paul Kagame said his country is currently in talks to establish the first messenger RNA vaccine plant in Africa, as the continent is currently battling with the pandemic, as is the case in the rest of the world. So one thing to note about vaccine manufacturing plants in Africa is that a handful of African countries do have manufacturing facilities, but the majority of these facilities are fill-finish facilities, meaning that you can only package and distribute the vaccine as opposed to making the ingredients from scratch. So we look forward to this project that is starting out in Rwanda, and we hope that, I don't know how long this is going to take, and we hope that it will come to fruition, and we can also have our own manufacturing facilities on the African continent. And with that, I would like to... Yes, I'm hearing the sound of talking drums. So that is a sign that our show has come to an end. Thank you very much to all of you who participated in the show today. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks for the next episode of This Week. In the meantime, hit that subscribe button to subscribe to the Leaders of Africa YouTube channel, and also consider joining our Discord community for more conversations and future program alerts. You can also find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. So head over to our website for all the details on how to get in touch with us. That's all for today's show, and we look forward to seeing you again. Bye.